7-year-old boy runs to a lair full of zombie monsters in order to find his mother. But none of them dared to provoke or stop him. They saw him and fled as if they had run into the devil, not only because of the foul odor emanating from it's more because his mother is a horrible overlord. But he finally saw his mother after a lot of difficulties. At this time his mother was fighting a man and a zombie. But controlled by the back eye, she didn't recognize him anymore. Even if he was used by the enemy as a captive, mother didn't care. Well, when the little boy cried out for his mother, the mother's love of the overlord's heart made her a little shaken. Seeing this scene, Backeye hurriedly took control of her body, intending to pull itself out of this body with its hands. But in the next second, an axe suddenly slashed at her wrist. A closer look reveals that this is a seriously wounded Hila using her last ounce of strength to launch the attack. Backeye's just reacted. Zombie Queen's claws have swung to the overlord's chest. At this point, the Backeye instantly flew out of her body. The crowd below saw this scene and exclaimed, "Is it going to work?" The Zombie Queen saw this and immediately reached out to kill him. But when the claws were just a hair's breadth away, the Backeye whipped out a spike and pierced her palm. Feeling the sting, Zombie Queen hurriedly withdrew her arm. She found that the Backeye had placed a small tentacle on her hand, and it was wriggling and squirming. The black-eyed floater who had succeeded in his plan was smirking. The Zombie Queen saw this and quickly swung at it with her other hand. A figure suddenly flew by in the dark. A hand snatched away the Backeye that had almost been killed. A closer look reveals that the visitor is actually female monster who was beaten by Zombie Queen with only one breath left. Zombie Queen found that she was still alive. She immediately rushed towards the female monster. As she was about to attack, a stab of pain came from the spikes. Unable to control her body, she quickly fell downward. Unwillingly, she sighed, "What a nightmare." Can only watch the female monster holding the black eyes from above to escape. At this point, the father and daughter below suddenly shouted for Zombie Queen to get up and hide. It turned out that the giant baby who had lost its back eye could not control its body and was smashing towards her. But at this point, she didn't have a single ounce of strength left. She couldn't move at all. She could only watch as the mountainous baby smashed into her. Yet my father and I saw the scene but didn't panic and went looking for, because we knew that with my mother's physical strength she would not be killed. But after searching for a long time, we only found a seriously injured sister Hila. I gave her a big hug, but she was still worried about my health. Just as my father was about to ask her where my mother was, we then saw a familiar figure slowly rise from the rubble. The Zombie Queen regains consciousness and rushes to look into her own hand. She found that the tentacles had disappeared. She looked at the overlord lying on the corpse of the giant baby and thought about it. And although she didn't catch that back eye, it was finally over. Now, if kill the overlord, we can easily take the supplies here. This is a rare opportunity. With this in mind, sharp claws emerged from her fingers. Just as she reached out to kill the overlord, suddenly her arm was grabbed by a pair of hands tightly. Turning his head, she found that the other man was the son of the overlord. And he kept saying under his breath, "Mommy, come play." The overlord who heard the child's voice was dying and reached out to answer him. Seeing this touching scene, everyone's emotions instantly felt very sad. Hearing his mother call himself, the child was in tears. But the Zombie Queen still looked at him with those cold eyes. The next second, she heaved a long sigh, and then she used the spikes at the back of her head to quickly lash out at the overlord's chest. Then the corpse poison was poured into her body in a continuous stream. The helpless little boy could only cry on the sidelines, banging the Zombie Queen's ass with both hands. Seeing this scene, I rushed back and begged my father. But he smiled at me and said, "Don't worry. Your mother is helping to heal her wounds." As a little girl, I didn't know what my father was saying. I can only with a face full of questions, looking at him who was giggling. It didn't take long for the Zombie Queen to pull out the spikes, and then scolded the little boy, "Stop fighting. It hurts so much." Frightened, he then sobbed and withdrew his arm. At that moment a familiar voice suddenly came. Only then did he realize that his mother had gotten up and called out to him. In an instant his tears came out like a flood. And then they both held out their hands. The next moment they were already holding each other tightly together. They were crying tears of joy. Zombie Queen, who was standing by and watching the scene, exclaimed, "Mother and son look so much alike. No matter how scary the monster is, it's the same as me. We're all parents who love our children, and that's enough." At this point, the daughter also threw herself into her arms. And with that she said to mother, "Let's go home." And then they went on their journey home. I waved goodbye to the little boy as I was leaving, seeing this strange action of mine. He thought for a moment and then waved at me like I did. On the other hand, the black-eyed female monster said to her father, "Don't we have to absorb the blood of the underground overlord?" The father in the front replied, "It doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm fully nourished." However, the female monster who had fought with Zombie Queen was a little worried, because it was harder for them to find the mother and the daughter. I don't know where they are at this time, but her father told her not to worry about it. He already knew where they were. Once he gets his body back, he can become a very powerful zombie. There is no need to absorb the perfect whole. He then asked the female monster to tell the cannibal church friends, tell them to bring the mother and daughter to him. What exactly did he want to do next? After a difficult battle, we were able to get our supplies and leave. On the way home, we had to fight as few walkers as possible. Once the encounter is not long-eyed will be Sheila's sister and axe to kill. After all the fighting we did, we arrived home safely. And just when I was happy about that, Father realized that Sister Gila had disappeared behind him. Only a bloody axe was left on the ground, only to find that she had fainted in the corner from exhaustion. When she woke up again, it was 3 days later. The first moment she woke up, she saw me with a worried face, but she kept saying Xiaoya's name. Seeing this, I rushed to shake her and cried, "Sister Gila, have you lost your memory? Who is Xiaoya? I'm Zhufu." Feeling pain, she hurriedly asked me to let go of her hand. And then she got up and stroked my head and asked, "Where is this?" I cried with joy at the sound of her familiar voice. "Sister, you fainted. My parents helped you with a simple treatment." Before I could finish, a voice came from outside the door. I looked and saw that my parents were standing outside the door calling us to dinner. Hearing this, I hurriedly smiled and pulled Sister Gila forward. When I arrived in the living room, I saw a steaming pot of noodles. The father was eating it with tears and snot. I rushed to pick up the bowl and join him. But behind me, my mother was thinking about something with a serious face. And yet my father was talking and eating without a care. Gila was looking at her pink clothes with a puzzled face and asked me, "How did such an ugly dress get on her?" After hearing that, I replied while laughing, "This is my mother's dress." The bear who was eating didn't forget to look at Gila's muscular body. Seeing the scars on her body, she is definitely not an ordinary person. Thinking of the image of her being able to work with her wife to fight the giant baby before, the bear gulped in fear. Soon, bored after eating, I asked Sister Gila to rush to play with herself after she finished eating. But even though she said yes, but her eyes were fixed on my infected finger. The father on the sideline saw that the situation was not right. Rushing me back to the room to count, from 1 to 100 they came to play with me. The innocent me ran back inside happily immediately after hearing, slamming the door heavily in the process. Seeing this, Gila hurriedly asked the father. The child's nails had become shorter. "Did you help cut them?" The bear took a long sigh before he slowly said, "Her nails look like this every 2 days. The doctor in Hope Village should know why. But on the way there, those cannibals don't know if they're going to do anything to my wife and daughter. I don't know if it's safe to arrive at the village yet, so I'd like you to come with me. Of course we'll compensate you as much as we can. You just have to escort me back from Hope Village." He also handed her a large bowl of noodles. I didn't expect Gila to put down the bowl she had finished eating and replied coldly, "You don't let your wife protect you, but you come to me? Do you think I would not hesitate to say yes to you?" And he took the noodles from the bear. "But you seem to have forgotten what happened in the underground village. At that time you have some emotional illusions about me. Don't be ridiculous. I don't give a shit about you guys. Why should I bet my life to help you guys?" And just when we thought Gila would refuse, she said again, "I'm not going to help you, but we'll go together. I'll just protect Zhufu like I always do. The rest is up to you." Hearing this, the bear immediately agreed, but a zombie queen aside said, "What are you talking about? What if you're in danger all by yourself?" The bear, helpless, can only force a smile. "I'll protect myself. You don't have to worry." By now the zombie queen was staring coldly at Gila on the sidelines. She thought, what a woman who doesn't know how to be flexible. It was the same in the underground village. Why are you so desperate to protect someone else's daughter? This always feels like she's Zhufu's mother. At this point I suddenly ran out of the room and shouted, "You guys are too much. Why isn't anyone coming to me?" Seeing this, Sister Gila hastily agreed to accompany me to play. Suddenly a hand grabbed my arm tightly, just as I was feeling confused. The other hand was also caught. Looking closely, I realized that they were my mother and Sister Gila, who loved me. The zombie queen was thinking, "Stinky bitch, if you want to be a mother, you can have one yourself." Why are you looking for my sweet daughter? This woman is really no good. In the blink of an eye, the two were about to explode in anger at each other. The bear next to him is eating the noodles in fear. As he ate, he thought, since Gila is willing to go along, it really put my mind at ease. Now it would be nice to just get a car that I can drive. Early the next morning, Gila and Bear set out on a journey to Hope Village. And while they were looking for a car they could drive, an ear-splitting cry for help suddenly rang out from the tall building above. The two men with question marks on their faces instantly stopped in their tracks. Then they looked up to the source of the sound. The nosy bear turned around and tried to rush up, but he was grabbed by Gila and scolded angrily. "You stay out of other things, you brat. Don't forget what we came out for this time. You don't even have the ability to defend yourself and you want to help others. I advise you to put your mind on your daughter, or I'll kill you right now." Looking into Gila's eyes full of anger, the bear stammered in a cold sweat and replied, "I have a good idea. How about you listen to it first?" But Gila's face instantly became very grave when she heard it. It turns out that there was a girl up there who was being chased by three men. At this point, she was cornered and had nowhere to go. The three people behind her were still telling her to give up her resistance. Soon the girl was already tied up by them. She sat on the ground shivering. The three men were talking recklessly on the sidelines. "It's a shame. It's so hard to catch a girl. We should enjoy it before we make plans." But was stopped by an associate on the sidelines. "If this is done, then she won't be worth anything in Hope Village. But what if the people there don't need her?" By now the girl was trembling all over with tears on her face, but her mouth kept whispering teacher. At that moment they said with a bad smile on their face, "If they don't want it, of course is to use her remaining value clean before throwing away." By now one of them was drooling and stroking her cheek. "Honestly, I hope Hope Village doesn't want you. In that case, you're mine." The sound of a weapon hitting the ground behind him before he could finish his sentence. He rushed back and cursed. What the hell? He saw a strong man was firmly strangling his accomplice. He just reacted to a heavy kick to the face. The two accomplices who had broken free rushed towards the exit, but they just ran 2 steps. A fist had smashed into the face of the man in front of him, and then he fell to the ground with a bloodied face. The accomplice behind him immediately chided, "Who are you?" But in return for Gila's murderous stare and cold words, "Hand over everything if you don't want to die." Hearing this, the two men swung their weapons and rushed towards Gila. "You're the one who should hand over the stuff, you crazy bitch." But before he could touch Gila, she dented his face. At this time has been untied. The girl sobbed and thanked the bear. The girl's name is Gaoingshi. Also know that she came from Hope Village. The bear laughed with a smug face after hearing this. "Gila, look, we've come to the right place. We were lucky enough to save the people of Hope Village. Don't be angry anymore." She laughed when she learned that the two were preparing to go to Hope Village. "Our village is very welcoming to people as strong as uncle and sister. Today is my first time out to promote the village." Two people listened to the moment, froze long time speechless, but in his heart he was secretly happy that he had not expected to meet the people of the village, and so reliable. This is simply destiny, right? At this point, the girl handed the two a poster saying, "If you come, the dean and the teachers will be very happy." Just as the bear took the poster and was puzzled, the two men suddenly felt a dangerous aura coming on. Next, Hira instantly blocks a strong man's attack with her axe. He then said coldly, "Are you all in this together? Release my family immediately, or I will cut you down." At these words, Bear and Gila were full of questions. Don't know who his family is. It was then that she stepped forward and explained, "Teacher, they saved me. I'm sorry, I should have followed you." The man listened to the cold face before squeezing out an ugly smile and said, "I apologize to you for my unreasonable behavior. After all, it happened suddenly." And the bear on the other side felt a little uneasy in his heart, because he found that Ingshi's legs were shaking constantly, and her voice was trembling. They did not know that the hand of her teacher on her shoulder was slowly forced, but with an ugly smile on his face that said, "Next time you must follow me well. You know I don't like to say the same thing over and over again." By this time, Ingshi was in pain, but the teacher was too strong and she didn't dare to resist. Just when we thought she would beg for mercy, the smile on the man's face suddenly disappeared. A closer look reveals that the hand on Ingshi's shoulder has been grabbed by the bear and lifted up. "See," the man coldly said to him, really bothered. "I don't like to hold hands with men." He said that his hand with the weapon is slowly forced. Gila and Ingshi, who were standing by, suddenly felt a little uneasy. Just when we thought two big men would fight. But the bear suddenly grinned and said, "You are the teacher of Hope Village, right? Nice to meet you. And with his other hand, he pushed aside Ingshi. She was not only good at introducing Hope Village, she was also very good at praising teachers. The man who heard this turned his head to look down at Ingshi. Smartly, she immediately gave a hand signal to the other side, with eyes full of trusting eyes. The eyes of the man who saw this scene instantly glowed red. At this point, he introduced himself to the bear and said, he is none other than Bai Xiuming, the teacher of Hope Village, by simply knowing and understanding. And they were released from their wariness of each other. Little Bear asked, can our families go to Hope Village too? Then he introduced Hila, who was his wife, and a sick daughter waiting at home. After saying that, the bear felt a coldness coming on. Hearing this, Bai Xiuming then laughed and said, we have a doctor in our village. Of course there's no problem, but you have to pay your own expenses. Then I have to go and tell the village first. I'll meet you tomorrow at the same time under this building. And then take Ingshi and walk towards the exit. Before she left, she even bowed to the two men to express her gratitude. When the bear turned his head to tell Hila to go home, only to be kicked hard in the leg by his opponent. Apparently, his presentation just now had annoyed Hila. So what's their next step? In order to get to Hope Village to find a doctor as soon as possible. When Bear and Hila got home, they rushed to pack their bags. And his wife bandaged his daughter's corpse poisoned finger. In the process, my mother was full of sadness for me, because I had never left home since I was a child, and not more than 5 meters away from her. But this time to Hope Village she couldn't follow. Not only was she being hunted by the cannibal cult outside, and as a zombie, she can't go to the human world. Just when she wanted to risk going with us, the next moment she was angrily reprimanded by her husband. What are you talking nonsense about with your daughter when you know you can't go? And then he calmly explained to his wife, no need to worry. We won't be there long. It's inevitable that we will be separated for so long for the first time as a family of 3. We'll be back as soon as our daughter's corpse poison is taken care of. And after that his palm was on his wife's cheek. But when he saw the sharp fangs of his wife, his cold sweat instantly emerged from his forehead. But even so he took she into his arms. He kissed his wife on the forehead. At this point, the zombie queen thought to herself, why am I a zombie monster? If I were human, I could be with my family anytime, anywhere. Thinking of my daughter and husband walking out of the house. When she saw her good daughter waving goodbye to her, the zombie queen was unsettled for a moment. If it weren't for the fact that I'm a zombie, and wouldn't have to rely on a strange woman to accompany the family out. How nice it would be if I was just an ordinary mother. Thinking about it, she let out a long sigh. I have to get my act together and do what I have to do. Looking at the palm of her hand that was lacerated by a black eye, as if she was ready to turn the other's nest upside down. On the other side, Ingshi and the teacher Xiuming had come out of the building. When he saw his red and swollen wrist, he thought to himself, that man has a lot of strength. Although I'm very confident in my strength. But it was on a completely different level from him. And his wife's intuition is very sharp. Feels like she should be as good at close combat as I am. They are the talents that Hope Village needs. I have to keep them. In that case, the Godfather must be very happy. Thinking about it, he inexplicably let out a weird, evil laugh. Behind him, Ingshi, who was unaware of the seriousness of the situation, echoed the same sentiment. We must introduce them both to Hope Village. It didn't take long for them to meet up and drive to the village. Looking at the cramped car, Xiuming apologized to them with embarrassment. Because there is only such a car, they can only barely ride. With that, he laughed and said, I can guarantee your safe arrival, but the doctor you're looking for has a bit of a temper. The bear listened and replied in a cold sweat, it seems that I can safely leave my daughter to him. But in his mind, he was thinking, my baby is going to be fine. At least let the doctor diagnose it first, so that we know how to treat it. I hope my daughter's problem is not very serious. I had never been in a car before, and I looked out the window and kept exclaiming, they do not know that at this time, driving Xiuming heart very happy. Obviously, he was thinking of the rich reward he would get after bringing several people to the Godfather. Will they make it to Hope Village safely? How scary is it when a zombie has autonomy? Not only did she start a happy family with a human man, and remembers everything before the mutation, and it's 100 times more powerful than any other zombie. She can take on thousands of monsters all by herself. But such a powerful zombie queen has infected her beloved daughter with zombie poison. While searching for her medicine, she offended the cannibalistic cult that ruled a 10-mile radius. At this point, she's being hunted by the other side. In order for my daughter to get rid of the zombie poison as soon as possible, she chooses to stay home alone and wait for the enemy. have her husband and Sheila take their daughter to Hope Village to find a doctor. It's a good thing they met the village before they went. With their help, they're soon on their way to the village of Hope. On the surface, they seem to be very polite people, but they don't dare to slack off. I was the only one sucking on my finger without a care in the world. Seeing me like this, father hurriedly said, "Shufu, do you remember what I said to you just now?" At that I immediately took out the finger in my mouth and nodded my head. Then I turned around and hugged Sister Hila and shouted, "Mom!" And he smiles and puts on an innocent and cute face. Seeing me like this, she blushed and didn't know what to say. A few moments later she stammered out a reply, "Don't be afraid, my daughter. I will protect you." The bear's face instantly pulled a crotch at the sight. This is so embarrassing. Is it that hard to pretend? Soon Xiuming's voice came from the cab, telling everyone to get out of the car. In the next moment, the trunk door has been opened. Then a welcome was heard. Turning around, I saw a bunch of people in front of us, greeting us. Cubby asked Xiuming what's going on. He smiled and replied, "You're scared, aren't you? We're a curious lot here. It's just a tradition. We're all good people. Don't worry about it." Suddenly, a loud voice came from the crowd. "Welcome, families, to Hope Village. I'm the man in charge here, Old Jean. It's a pleasure to meet your family." And with that, he led us towards the village. My father also praised the air and the people here, but Old Jean laughs, since the village was founded. This is the result of everyone's earnest hope. But in a time when humanity is worse than monsters, management is a very troublesome thing. Upon hearing this, the bear can only smile and say, "It's not going to be easy to run this place." But Old Jean laughed and said, "It's a lot of work. But they're family now." Seeing the way he talks and acts, Sheila seemed to sense a hint of something wrong. This scene may have also caught the eye of Old Jean, who was walking ahead of him. He then rushed to say that he talks too much. "I hope your daughter's illness is cured." And with that, he waved his hand and pointed to the hospital next door. Everyone turned to look and realized that there were handwritten words on the door. Seeing this, Old Jean hastens to say that while this place looks humble, but this is indeed Dr. Wu's clinic. You just stay here and enjoy yourselves. He'll help you. And with that, he turned and strutted off into the distance. Standing still, the bear asked Sheila, "It's so weird. What the hell is this place for?" Hila is not pleased to hear this. Not only is there no guard at the entrance, there's no headlights to keep the monsters out. Even the villagers aren't on guard. The whole village looks defenseless. Let's focus on Jufu first. With that, she opened the door to the hospital. But what she saw was a basement. As long as I can be cured of my disease, none of this will matter. With no time to think, we were soon below. Attentive bear noticed that there were no lights on. How did they build a hospital in the basement? That's when I think I kicked something. My center of gravity was unsteady, and I fell to the ground. I cried out instantly from the pain. The moment I opened my eyes, I saw a horrible sight. I saw a pair of red eyes staring at me, and it was covered with a quilt, and it seemed like a person. I instantly yelled out at the sight. My zombie-infested fingers were instantly engorged with blood, and then black fingernails emerged from the bandages. Frightened, I quickly stuck my finger out at the other guy and yelled, "Don't you come any closer!" But the black fingernail was already poking into his body. On the other side at home, Zombie Queen is waiting for cannibalism. At this point, she removes her entire body. Her eyes are closed as if she's thinking about something. The next moment, she opens her golden eyes and says, "It's not obvious, but I can feel it." And then there's the crunching sound of her fingers. It turns out that the tentacles hidden in her palm are squirming. In fact, it's a call from the leader of a nearby cannibalistic cult. After a few moments of searching, they'll soon find the location of the Zombie Queen. He then told his men to hurry to the... Can they find the Zombie Queen and defeat her? Upon seeing the bloodshot eyes across the room, I was so shocked that I instantly yelled out. I poked him with my zombie-poisoned finger, but he grabbed me by the arm. And at the same time there was a weird voice. "Kid, who are you? You scared me. What are you doing here?" He let go of my hand just as he finished his sentence. Without reacting, he was picked up by a hand. Sheila lifted the covers off of him. She then raises her axe and asks who he is. "Why are you sneaking around and hiding under the bed?" When looked closer, he was a handsome boy. "The axe is about to fall," he replied with a hurried, trembling voice. He said it was he who was the doctor here, and asked who we were. "Why did you come in here all of a sudden?" Hira was puzzled at this, but Bear was already on both knees, sweating and apologizing to him. Bear said he didn't know he was sleeping under a dark bed, but when he saw our apology, he snapped and said, "What do you care where I sleep?" And the little girl attacked me in self-defense. You see, she pierced my elf over the body. The bear smiled awkwardly at this and said, "Sorry, I'll pay you back later. Please calm down." But the doctor saw how weak my father was and asked me and Gila to apologize to him. Seeing the other side being so unreasonable, we're stumped for a while. When I saw the doctor gnashing his teeth to get him to see me, we had to hold back our anger and apologize to him. But he saw that we were not sincere at all. He just told us to get the hell out of there. And he said he wouldn't treat me. Even when my father tried to explain it to him, he refused to. But just as he was about to curse again, he saw the zombie poison on my index finger. While asking what it was, and gently touching it with his hand, he put me on the bed to check me out. He said it was the first time he'd ever seen anything like it. Hilla sniffs and rushes to ask him, "What is this?" He takes a long sigh and then wants to speak to Hila alone. But when he stepped aside, he said he didn't know. Sheila was so angry that she lifted the other man's collar and wanted to punch him. The doctor then rushed to explain. It's a fairly rare condition, infected only when bitten by a monster or when the blood of a monster sticks to the injured area. But your daughter shows no signs of injury or infection. It's the first time he's been in this situation. Luckily, she's in good health, but he can't guarantee what's going to happen next. So he told us to stay in the village for a few days and observe. Hearing this, Bear remembered the scene when he first met mother and daughter. The good old days of being family with them. The joy of victory over a powerful overlord. He felt helpless whenever he thought about it. And then asked the doctor not to tell anyone about my condition. Luckily, the other person was a reasonable person, and this was agreed to. Seeing his father's face become so grave, I pressed down on his big hand and said, "Dad, are you worried about Jufu? Is my condition hopeless?" He took my little hand away before I could finish. Soon the three of us left the hospital and went outside, looking at my daughter who was having fun playing with mud. The bear laughs to himself. I thought there would be a cure here. Instead, I ended up back at square one. It took a lot of effort to get to the doctor, but it's not the right news to tell my wife. He thought of his daughter looking at him with a worried look on her face. I couldn't tell her it's okay at that moment. I couldn't think of anything else I could do for her. Just when Bear didn't know what to do. On the sidelines, however, Hilla said that being by her side was the greatest love for her. She came to me and played with me, because that's what parents do. Upon hearing this, the bear hastened to give himself 2 slaps on the face. Then he got up and said he had an idea. Then he lifted his daughter up high and told everyone to go eat first. This scene was seen by Inchi, who was hiding in the shadows. When she remembers what old Jean told her to do, she's at a loss for words. Soon the 3 of us arrived at the village cafeteria. The bear was very happy to see a good meal. On the sidelines, I just gobbled my food. I didn't notice the grim look on Gila's face. She thought to herself, even the doctors couldn't find the cause of the disease. But I can see that this is definitely not normal. Think of Jufu's monster mother. If something happens to a child, I would have killed him myself. At that moment a voice came from behind. Can I join you? I see that it's the dean, old Jean. Before the 3 of them could answer, he sat down next to the bear, watching us eat contentedly. He then asked us if we wanted to go out together for the night to look for supplies. After all, you can't eat and drink here for free. If you go out at night, all the zombies and monsters come out. It'll be easier to go inside the building and look for supplies. Bear and Sheila look puzzled at this, but old Jean is still being aggressive. Exasperated, Hilla retorts sternly, "Old man, you think you're so smart? But how do you get past those monsters out there without getting killed?" After saying that, her face instantly became incredibly grim. The bear rushes to apologize to old Jean when he sees this, but old Jean said he wasn't kidding about what he said, and he patted himself on the back and swore, "Is going to show us the miracle of the food festival." Will they agree to go out with the villagers in search of supplies? The humans have traveled to a place full of zombies in search of supplies. Not only do they not feel the slightest bit of fear, instead, they all had happy smiles on their faces. It's because they're all wearing red cloaks. That's why the zombies don't come near them. The bold ones even run their hands over the zombies. But there are still a few without cloaks who are sweating from fear. Bear joined in for the sake of his daughter, seeing this horrible group of zombie monsters close at hand. He's in complete disbelief that these filthy things aren't attacking them. But in the back of his mind he was thinking, old Jean must know something about monsters. On the other side, the group that had found the supplies were fighting over a small amount of supplies. Even if it's just a bottle of water, they want to kill each other. That's when Dean suddenly said to everyone, "Every one of you seems to be having a good time." But of course, after all, it's a perfect moment. With that, he snapped his fingers at a few zombies in front of him and smiled evilly. "I'm going to let you witness a miracle." With the sound of snapping fingers, the hungry and thirsty zombies came at the crowd in a flash. Cubby breaks out in a cold sweat at the sight, because at this point, the crowd has been attacked by a horde of zombies. And old Jean is watching it all with a smile on his face. Apparently, this isn't the first time he's put his own kind in the jaws of the tiger. Looking at the poor, helpless creatures known as humans, and those who beg for forgiveness in the face of fear, he let out a heartbreaking laugh. As the two of them are talking about how they haven't seen anyone who's new to the village, a murderous aura came to old Jean in an instant. A closer look reveals that the bear is battling a horde of zombies, and the monsters are getting their heads bashed in. Some of the female zombies are even crying from the beating. In fact, Bear had already struck out at the monsters when he saw them attack. With his experience in battle, he instantly sensed something was wrong, because he realizes the zombies aren't attacking old Jean and the others, and a few of them seem to be planning something. Facing the horde of zombies, he can only fight and figure out what to do, but there's just too many for Bear. It's too much for him to handle on his own. Suddenly his arm is bitten by a zombie. Feeling the pain, he fights to throw the walker a few meters away. Looking at the bite, only a teeth mark remains. He's very grateful. Luckily, he didn't bite through the skin. But suddenly a strange sound reaches his ears. "It fucking hurts. You're a big, fat idiot." Realizing that it's a zombie talking to him, the bear looks puzzled. But another group of zombies is already coming at him. He swipes at them with his backpack. But there are a few smart ones who know how to sneak up from behind. But a back elbow to the head from the agile bear. He swung his heavy book bag in a smooth motion, shouting that he was going to slam it at his opponent. The old Jean crowd, standing by and listening to the fight, said, "We haven't seen anyone this interesting in a while." The old Jean smiles evilly at his teammate aside, "Teacher, now I finally know why you like him. He drove those monsters away with just his backpack. This is really more than I expected." He was already drooling at the corners of his mouth. At this point, there's a walker biting into Bear's backpack, and he's surrounded by monsters. "Look at the bear about to die here today." Old Jean immediately clapped his hands. But suddenly his eyes widened, because the group of zombies that were on top of the bear had already been bloodied by his punches. Some of the zombies are still in pain from a bright light. A closer look reveals that Bear has an axe and a flashlight in his hand. Now he realizes how useful an axe can be. But even so, he can't get out of here without a problem, because there's just too many of them. And they're getting their strength back. He's already exhausted. He looks at the wounded walker who is laughing at himself, while hacking at his opponent with the axe, thinking, "If I can't stop them from healing, I won't be able to get out of here. Even when I'm tired, I have to concentrate. I'll find a way to escape." But by this time, he's all alone, surrounded by a horde of zombies. Just when he feels like there's really no way to escape, he remembered what Sheila had said to him before he left for the supplies. "Did you believe that crazy old man when he said, 'You're smart'? Why did my then self believe everything old Jean said, and was constantly arguing against what Hilla said was wrong, and remembering all the things the couple did before to protect their family? Sheila put her life on the line to protect her daughter. If only I had the fighting skills of those two, I might be able to protect Jufu from harm. But this is reality. Fantasies don't happen." Watching countless zombie arms claw at him, with old Jin's command, the horde of zombies instantly pounces on the bear. In the blink of an eye, he's surrounded by zombies. Can Bear escape alone? Just when we think he's about to be eaten alive by walkers, a loud clapping sound reaches the crowd's ears. Old Jean claps his hands and says, "You monsters have had your fun and you're out of here." The crowd that saw this scene was filled with confusion. They can't believe that the zombies that were so violent and bloodthirsty just a moment ago are now slowly retreating. No one knows what's going on. As the crowd was filled with questions, they saw old Jean hold out his hands and say, "This is the miracle that exists in our village of hope. None of you have been injured by this miraculous power." The people who heard this realized that they really hadn't been bitten. Suddenly old Jin's raspy voice resonates again. "Getting rid of the monster. You can have a future full of hope. You can realize your dreams in Hope Village. Anything you want is possible. If you trust me, I can guarantee your future. The crowd listens and kneels towards old Jean. They kept yelling, "We believe in you, we want to follow you. We'll do whatever we can for Hope Village." But the kneeling bear kept his mouth shut. And in the back of his mind, he's still thinking that this must be his plan. He uses fear to gain people's trust. He can even control monsters to attack humans. What happened to this village? He suddenly senses that these people in the red cloaks must be something else. Unbeknownst to him, one of the women had also noticed him. At the same time, in the hospital, I had no idea what was happening to my father out there. I'm happily talking and laughing with Sister Gila. Every now and then, they tease with the doctor who sleeps at the bottom of the bed. Seeing Gila's long-lost smile and love for me, I was reminded of my mother who loved me so much, as I speak my thoughts to her. But then I saw Gila's eyes grow heavy for a moment. On the other side, Zombie Queen at home is ready. Because she knew the cannibals would come for her. They'll use the tentacles implanted in her body to locate her. And that's when a familiar but unfamiliar voice suddenly came into her head. "It's time to return the body you stole from me." Then gradually remembered the tentacles growing out of the back of her head. And the way she herself looks now could be the result of what happened that day. Think about when I became human. Did I lose my memory when I became a monster? Come to think of it, she doesn't know who she is either. Suddenly, countless strands of hair slowly came through the door. The battle-hardened Zombie Queen instantly sensed this. As the hairs launched themselves at her, she's right behind her opponent with a quickness. And then she grabbed it by the neck with a vicious slap. In the blink of an eye, blood gushes from the aorta like a fountain. Zombie Queen seems to have remembered something when she saw this. Isn't this furry guy the one from the underground village? How did it know I was here? I can't even feel that it's there. Just as Zombie Queen was wondering, suddenly an eerie voice comes. "I knew where you were from the beginning. But you disappoint me a little bit. You remember me as a furry monster. That's brutal. I'd really like to talk to you in person." Just as she was about to speak her mind, Zombie Queen's claws are on her neck, and then she slammed it down on the ground, and then asked her if she could read minds. "If I'm not mistaken, you were sent by the cannibals, weren't you? Did you bring anyone else besides the tentacles?" The monster is dumbfounded by the various inquiries. She can only laugh. "Is that all the information you have for me?" Zombie Queen looks puzzled at this statement. In this moment of confusion, her opponent has taken the opportunity to escape her control. Seeing the situation, Zombie Queen rushes to swing two sharp spikes at her. They pierce through the creature's body in an instant. Just when she thought she'd tackled her opponent again, the monster scoffs instead. "Do you really think this is going to work? You know nothing about me. But I know everything about you. You have a charming husband and a lovely daughter. And they're in Hope Village at the moment with the woman with the axe. And on top of that, the cannibals are after you right now." Zombie Queen inquired with a puzzled look on her face. "What are you doing here? If you're not a cannibal, then who are you?" But she didn't finish her sentence. Her opponent's entire body is instantly covered in hair. She extends her hands towards Zombie Queen and bites her, all the while mouthing the words, "Let's talk face to face." Just as Zombie Queen is looking at the monster with a questioning look on her face, in the next second, the opponent had arrived in front of her, facing the monster's sudden attack. Can Zombie Queen defeat the monster again, and then head to Hope Village to save the father and daughter? She's the Zombie Queen who rules the party. She can slaughter 100,000 beasts with just 2 spikes. Now it can't control the tentacles inside. Not only does it turn it into an evil monster, it also beat her all over herself. But in order to get to Hope Village and rescue her daughter as quickly as possible, she had to fight with everything she had. It's a good thing Zombie Queen has a lot of experience in battle. Soon enough, one of her opponent's arms is chopped off. She kicks his opponent in the stomach, just when she thinks she's killed the stuffed monster. The next second, the monster slowly rises from the ground, and it scoffs at the Zombie Queen. She thinks to herself, paralysis is the only way to go now, because the severed arm has regrown by now. While Zombie Queen is trying to figure out what to do, the plush monster suddenly spoke up. "Don't fool yourself. After all, you did your best. Now you have nothing, and I can even feel your emotions now. You're afraid to admit it, so I'm going to have to tell you everything. Look at the way it looks down from above." Zombie Queen thinks she can't beat this guy. She quickly dashes off toward the front of the room, but she's only taken 2 steps. Her body was pierced by the monster's hair. She couldn't believe it, even with the blood coming out of her mouth. According to her own strength, even if she can't beat her, escaping isn't a problem at all. She doesn't know why her opponent is so fast. At this point, the plush monster laughed at it. Take a good look at me. You're a loser. You're a coward. Until now, you've been afraid to acknowledge my existence. Then she pulls Zombie Queen back from the front, and in doing so, she pierces her body again with her hair. At this point, she's desperate. But her heart wouldn't let her close her eyes now. Not to mention being killed by someone she doesn't know. And yet, as the plush monster's hands flashed out, Zombie Queen's spikes and arms are instantly snapped off. In the blink of an eye, all that's left of her are her shoulders and head. But the stuffed monster's mouth is still chattering. Why are you pouring your heart out to those liars? Wake the fuck up, you little piece of shit. Just when Zombie Queen felt like her life was over, an image of the father-daughter duo leaving instantly popped into her head. Thinking of her husband's kiss on the forehead and his sweet words to herself. When thinking of her promise to protect them well. A loud, resounding shout suddenly enters her mind, only to see Zombie Queen holding that black eye in both hands. Tears of sadness flowed from her eyes as she threw her head back and shouted. Just when we thought Zombie Queen had really died at the hands of a stuffed monster, her eyes, glowing with gold, opened up in an instant. The next thing she knew, she found herself lying on the floor of her house. Zombie Queen wakes up and thinks it was just a normal nightmare. But the pain in her head seemed so real. Just as she was feeling puzzled, a voice suddenly came from behind her. Sister, are you okay? You look so tired. Can I help you? Turning my head to look, she realized there's a couple of tall figures standing right behind her. Before she can react, Zombie Queen has been struck with a hard punch to the cheek. A closer look reveals it's none other than Big Eyes, the female monster of cannibalism. This time, she's brought with her 3 seemingly powerful helpers. One of the female monster things saw Zombie Queen get beaten up by Big Eyes. She even pretended to tell her to stop. And the bald-headed monster Aggie suddenly said, "It's a pity. She's my type." On the sidelines, Big Eyes hears this and chastises him in a fiery manner. "You like such an ugly woman? And she already has a husband and a child, you know?" Aggie gave a thumbs up and said, "A woman like that makes me like her even more." At this point, Zombie Queen has been so pissed off that she's gnashing her teeth. She then kicked Aggie in the crotch. He screamed as he felt the pain hit him. Seeing this scene, Big Eyes shouted, "Who gave you the courage?" However, before she could finish her sentence, Zombie Queen's other foot had kicked her hard against the wall. A few people still haven't reacted. She has escaped their sight. Big Eyes sees this and hastily yells out, "Ling, what are you doing? Why did you let her escape?" But Ling laughed indifferently and said, "There's no need to be so hasty. She won't run away from me." Apparently, she's relying on the tentacles inside Zombie Queen. Soon she's fleeing into the ruins of a zombie-infested city. But the next second, a few people from the cannibal cult found her. Big Eye sees this and immediately sneaks up on Zombie Queen from behind. Just when she thinks she's succeeded in her plan, she realized it wasn't Zombie Queen. When she reacted, it was too late. Zombie Queen is already clawing at her back. But what she didn't realize was that the mantis was catching the cicada and the yellow bird was behind her, because Aggie has attacked Zombie Queen's back. But how could this little trick escape her sharp eyes? Before Aggie could attack, his belly was torn apart by the Zombie Queen's grasp. But her body is still trapped by Aggie. Just as the enemy's wind-breaking fist came to her skull, she saw a figure cross over toward the big man. In the blink of an eye, Zombie Queen breaks free and dodges several meters away. Having taken out 2 monsters in an instant, she thinks to herself that there is only one left. But what she saw next took her breath away, because the 2 monsters she had just badly injured were being healed by Ray's tentacles. Facing such a terrifying enemy this time, can Zombie Queen still make it out of this one? She was once the Zombie Queen that the zombies feared, but now she's trapped by them. Not only because of their large numbers, but also their combat power is unimaginable. Tentacles alone can heal wounds quickly. She's like a lamb to the slaughter. Looking at the Zombie Queen who used to beat the crap out of her, Monstrous proudly compares her hand to a camera trying to record the moment. Just when we thought Zombie Queen was dead for sure, an aura of terror suddenly approaches the monsters. And with his guard down, Big Eyes doesn't even notice. When she reacts and looks towards her opponent, spotting accomplice being knocked away by the enemy, the bound Zombie Queen instantly smells something dangerous and familiar. A closer look reveals that it is the Dungeon Master. And the Matrix has her 7-year-old son with her. The boy who saw the Zombie Queen did not forget to say hello. When the monsters saw the woman who could control the giant hand, they froze in place in a cold sweat. Not sure why the Dungeon Master is here. The Zombie Queen is now free from the monsters. She's thinking about, why did that guy suddenly come out of the dungeon? I can't handle her now. The cannibals on the other side are helpless. They're all staring at each other, not knowing what to do. Suddenly Ray yells in a commanding tone, "Don't panic. We're not here to fight the dungeon master. Our target is the zombie queen that holds our father's body. If we catch her, we'll be out of here in no time." With that, she waved her hand and pointed to zombie queen for everyone to attack. Upon hearing this, the monsters immediately attacked her. Just when we thought zombie queen was really going to die this time, the little boy on the sidelines suddenly looks to his mother and whispers, "Let's play." The woman who found her son talking to her licked her tongue as if she wanted to eat it all up. And then a pair of giant hands reached out to the monsters. The mother and child were like tigers coming down from the mountain. The giant hand and the cannibalistic monsters are coming towards Zombie Queen at the same time. She felt a fear she had never felt before. Thinking of bear and daughter, she kept motivating herself in her mind. Just as the two sides were about to crash into Zombie Queen, she shouted, "Come on, you assholes." But the next second, she saw giant hands surrounding her like a wall. It turned out that it wasn't her that the city's master was after, but the cult of cannibalism. A huge hand like a mountain is seen attacking the clan. Aggie thought she was being careless, but the not-so-smart Ray sensed something was wrong. But it's too late, for the two remaining companions have already taken up positions towards Zombie Queen, as she craned her head to look at the city lord, only to find the other side smiling at her. Her eyes were filled with confusion at the sight. The two monsters were already charging towards Zombie Queen, but it's hard to find her amongst the thousands of monsters. Just when Aji just discovered Zombie Queen, he was suddenly attacked in the back. In the next second, his head had fallen to the ground. The big man who has a panoramic view of this scene, it swings its weapon at her. But the other party has fled quickly. Stupidly, he's still yelling and asking where she is, because at this point he's blind in both eyes again. He thought to himself, if we attack at random, we'll hurt our people, but Zombie Queen was already behind him. On the sidelines, Xiaoling just told him to watch his back. But Zombie Queen's claws have already slashed through the troll's back. At this point, he feels like his flesh is melting. Seeing that his opponent was close, he swung his hand to attack, but the Zombie Queen's spikes are already on top of his head. At this point, Big Eyes, who had just passed out, has awakened. She's in a daze and doesn't know what's going on. Slowly she looks up as she looks up, and realizes that Zombie Queen and the city lord's mother and son are staring at her. But she panicked and chanted, "Where is my family?" When she saw the pile of bodies on the ground, her eyes grew dim for a moment. She couldn't believe that what she saw was real. But Zombie Queen's hand was already on her head. And then she was asked to tell her everything she knew, or I'll cut off her head and kick it in the balls. And then I'll eat your flesh in one bite. Upon hearing this, Big Eyes rushed to his knees and begged for mercy. She said, "Hope Village is our second hideout. We saw your family there." Zombie Queen's eyes instantly light up at her. At the same time, on the other side, the cub crowd is heading home with the people of Hope Village. Listening to them talk together, Bear's mind was filled with doubt. How did those zombie monsters, controlled by the headmaster, also have the ability to speak? It's no use telling Sheila and the others about this. It would even increase their fear of this place. And now they don't know the condition of their daughter. Just when Bear was feeling at a loss for what to do, a woman's voice suddenly comes from the side. "I'll see you at the hospital." He look over and realize it's the woman who's been staring at him the whole time. It wasn't long before she actually pushed open the door to the hospital. Seeing the visitor, Sheila rushes out of bed, then coldly motioned for her to come in and sit inside. After introduction, she is Ingxi's mother. It was from saying that she found out about Bear and his party coming to the village. Looked closer, they realized she only had one arm. Is this woman of unknown origin a friend or foe? As soon as the woman finishes her sentence, Sheila grabs her by the neck. The doctor under the bed rushes to tell her to stop, but Sheila's not giving him the time of day. He's still got a death grip on the woman. Seeing this, the woman said, "The Dean is a dangerous man." She also said that the Dean has his eye on your daughter. Even if you run to the ends of the earth, the monsters will find you, because he's the one who created the cannibal tribe. The two of them dropped their jaws when they heard this. It's clear they've come here to throw themselves into a trap. After a brief exchange of words, we learned that the woman's name was Li Ying. Her daughter is also in the Dean's sights. In order for Sheila and the others to help rescue, she's going to tell them everything she knows. 3 years ago, she and her family risked their lives to gather supplies, trying to avoid zombie monsters on the way. Husband proposes a plan to travel to Hope Village, but by then, not only was the daughter exhausted, even she, as an adult, had run out of steam. It's a good thing she had her husband to encourage her along the way. The three of them found their way to the village without a hitch. She was tired and hungry. In a daze, she saw Lao Jin leading the village, greet them like a welcoming bear. But the women weren't sure if this place would survive. She was shocked when she saw the village's facilities. It's full of happiness and warmth. It's like before the end of the world. In that moment, the woman put her worries behind her and felt a sense of relief. After settling in at Hope Village, the family resumed their happy routine, and the husband became the vice principal, because he helped the village prosper. And that's when the woman met the doctor. When he came to the village for the first time, it was the situation of the village that she introduced to him. But what changes a woman's mind is, Lao Jin took them outside the village to look for supplies. If you wear a red cloak, you won't be attacked by monsters. At that time, she looked at Jin as if he were a god. Listening to his words, women even shed tears of excitement. But the happiness didn't last long. That night her husband came home in a hurry to tell her, "This is a dangerous place. We have to leave as soon as possible." Because he saw the monster in the basement and the bodies of the villagers who left the village. Seeing his horrified expression, the woman decisively refuses, not only because they have nowhere to go when they leave here, and she doesn't want to risk her daughter's life again. There's no difference between the outside world and hell at this point. In an attempt to calm an agitated husband, the woman tells him to stay where he is and let her take care of it. Soon she finds the dean, Kim, and tells him the truth. She wants to live in Hope Village with her family. He didn't even think twice about it. And the woman was left with tears of gratitude. But they were soon approached with a problem. But I don't know if it's the fact that they run when they see a monster, or that time the women went to the basement without question. Could it be a lack of confidence in Dean? But neither of them had time to explain. He has maneuvered the monster to bite one of the woman's arms off, even killed her husband who was appointed vice president. She was helpless and confused. Watching her husband crawl towards her with only one breath left, the woman cries out in an instant, "Why is this happening to us?" She just wants her family to be happy here. Just as she was breaking her heart, suddenly, there's the sound of the dean's voice behind her, scolding her. "I'll let you stay and live in the village. It's because I believe we're already a family. But you betrayed the good that I did for you. Your family no longer belongs in Hope Village." The woman who heard this felt like the sky was falling in half. She can only kneel on the ground and keep begging Lao Jin to give her another chance, and then swore that it would never happen again. "It's my fault. I couldn't convince my husband. I'll do anything you want, whether as your servant or slave. If only you would save my husband." But before the woman could finish her sentence, a man rushed up to her and slapped her hard and said, "You betrayed us once. Why do you still ask for our trust? You ungrateful rats. We're the ones who gave you a happy life." But the words were not finished. Behind him, Lao Jin came to stop it. "It's not that I don't give you a chance. As long as you kill your husband, I'll let you mother and daughter stay." With that, he threw a knife at the woman. By then she was at her wit's end. To keep her daughter alive and healthy, a woman can only endure the pain. Raise the knife and approach the husband. Saying he's sorry, he stabs him in the heart. After all this, Lao Jin's voice suddenly came. "I know this is hard for you, but you made a choice. We're family now." And with that, he took her in his arms. At that moment, the woman felt like she had lost everything. She could only ask Lao Jin to do her a favor. What favor would she ask this mean old man? Having dodged a bullet, she was devastated. She sees the sudden death of her father. Not knowing what had happened, she could only hug and cry. The dean on the sidelines also pretended to cry while stating, "This couple bravely fought the monster that broke into our village last night. It was my carelessness that threatened the safety of the people." And then he promised it wouldn't happen again. In fact, it was only done to appease the village. Even the man who severely injured the woman's husband pretended to offer a bouquet of flowers as a gesture of condolence. What's disgusting is that the woman herself planned all of this, and also to keep the crowd from knowing the truth of the matter. If not, they'll just use her daughter for all sorts of unspeakable things. Since then the woman has vowed revenge. It doesn't matter how long it takes or how much it costs. Only by erasing Dean Lao Jin from this world, so that daughter can live a healthy and happy life. She had a plan when the bear came to the village. The doctors on the other side took my blood and did dozens of experiments, injecting mice with blood from their fingers. In a few seconds, the mouse will mutate into a zombie rat, but injecting it with blood from somewhere else is normal. And eventually he found that at the end of the mutation site there was a membrane. That membrane seems to prevent the virus from spreading to other parts of the body. So she has a gene that can stop infection or immunity. At that moment Liang suddenly pushed the door in and said, "We're all set. Get out of here." Hearing this, I blankly inquire, "Where are we going? Where are my parents?" But Liang stroked my head and said, "They'll be back soon." Unbeknownst to me, Sheila and the others had followed the dean to a basement. As they walked, they chatted about all the good things that had happened in the village. When they hear this, they remember what Liang said. That made them believe more about the village. The two men's faces instantly turned somber at the thought. And now Lao Jin suddenly covered his mouth. And the next moment, he was laughing uncontrollably. The bear on the other side of the room asked him what he's laughing at. But upon seeing him say that the other guy made up such a funny story, Bear and Sheila say we're family now, so you shouldn't have lied like that. If you lose your credibility from the beginning. Yet the teacher who heard this laughed and said, "You're afraid I won't be able to resist killing you all, aren't you?" At this point old Jean, who was slowing down on the sidelines, suddenly stated, "To be honest, I have very little hope for you guys." Sheila listens and says, "In that case, we will no longer be part of your family. We're free to leave, right?" But Lao Jean laughed, "You don't have to go back. There's another way to make you part of our family." With that, he snapped his fingers at the two of them. In the next moment, drops of unknown liquid suddenly fall from above onto Sheila's head. The two of them don't even notice that there's a monster with a tongue spitting out of its mouth right above their heads, and it's roaring hysterically at them. The sound was instantly heard throughout the village. The villagers, believing it to be a monster attack, instantly panic. Li Ying, who is ready for the attack, rushes over with some men in red cloaks. "If you don't want to die, leave the village with us now." Ingshi looks at her mother with a puzzled look on her face. At the same time, on the other side, Bear and Sheila are fighting the monster. As the monster is too strong, the bear's pistol can't do a thing. He sees this and tries to get Sheila to step back. But before he can finish his sentence, he sees Sheila charging forward. The monster instantly retaliated by sticking its tongue out at her. She cuts it off in the next second. The monster's jaw drops when he realizes how powerful his opponent is. The clever Sheila knows to use her clothes as a distraction. While the monster's attention is on it, she has swung her axe in front of it. And with that, she has split its head in two. But the next moment a woman's voice came out. "What a shame. My face is here. You didn't expect that." A red-skinned woman is seen emerging immediately afterward. But in the blink of an eye, an axe is on her forehead. By this time Sheila has also landed handsomely and firmly. When a few men in red cloaks arrived to see this scene, they froze instantly. Because the creature's body was lying on the ground covered in blood, and the bears say they were almost eaten alive. At that moment, Sheila felt an aura of danger coming over her. Will they need a stronger monster? This woman, in order to keep her child alive, she had to sacrifice her husband's life. The young girl who survived not only didn't care for her mother. Instead, she holds the child and threatens her with a gun. The clueless girl thought it was her mother who betrayed the family. The father took the blame for her. While out searching for supplies, he was attacked by monster. At this time, she saw with her own eyes that her mother had someone kill the doctor. Ingshi is even more convinced that the other man is not a good person. Hearing her daughter think that way about herself, the heart of a woman who loves her daughter as much as her life is instantly broken. In order for Ingshi not to hurt me, the woman asked several men in red cloaks to follow her. She had no choice but to carry me into the basement. On the other side, the zombie queen is holding the female monster Diane hostage. She's been killing zombie monsters on her way to find her teammates. Diane turns her head to see zombie queen panting and thinks to herself, "I'm going to take advantage of her and run away." But she's no sooner caught the idea than she's caught the other side. See the situation. She has to pretend to be concerned about Zombie Queen. "Would you like to rest for a moment?" At that moment, there was a sudden, staccato sound coming from all around. "You are an admirable man, but you crossed the line. I'm going to have to kill you." Upon hearing this, the two monsters quickly looked up in the direction of the voice. In the next moment, they saw a pair of giant horns falling from above. It appears to be Xiaolin, the woman Diane called in to help her. She also said she was going to chop off Zombie Queen's head and give it to her father. Diane is overjoyed to see his savior. She didn't realize that not only was she alive, but that she was risking her life to save her. But she said, "If you don't want to die, get out of here." As she spoke, she controlled the giant monster behind her to attack the Zombie Queen. Diane saw his teammate take decisive action and ran away. Zombie Queen thinks to herself, "My family is in danger. I am the only hope. They must be protected." And now the troll's hand is above her head. At the same time, Ingshi leads me to a dark basement. The woman who was worried about my safety followed me. Ingshi, who thought her mother was in her way, pointed her gun at her again. "Only the principal and the villagers are my family now." The woman's eyes are sad and confused. When I heard that, I shouted at her, "You're being mean. You shouldn't say that to your mom." At this point, Ingshi's hand is shaking with the gun. When the woman saw this, she quickly persuaded her not to do anything stupid. "She's doing everything for her own good. Although I was a terrible mother to you, not caring enough for you, no matter what you want to do, I'm stopping you. And don't you worry about the doctor. The blood he's shedding is fake. I swear I will never hurt my family," she said, walking slowly towards Ingshi. As she approaches, her hand gently grips the gun in Ingshi's hand. "One last time, Please believe me, this terrible mother. Listening to mother say such heartbreaking words. Inchi shed tears of sadness and remorse. Unbeknownst to them, the monsters above them are already moving in on them. The next moment, it's directly behind us. A few of the people who felt the shaking subconsciously turned their heads to look, only to see an ugly monster letting out a creepy laugh at them. Before we could react, we've been bound by each other's tentacles. The woman who sees this tries to pounce and pull, but she haven't touched them yet. The monster has fled with the two of them. With no time to think, she rushes her men to radio for backup. She herself gritted her teeth and looked in the direction of the monster's escape and said, "I will kill you slowly and painfully to avenge my husband." When we both looked down, we saw something unbelievable. We saw a couple of red-clad men fighting off monsters. At this moment, I also saw two familiar faces. They were my beloved father and Sheila. Upon hearing my cries, the two of them look up in a hurry. But Sheila was breathing heavily and staring at the scene above, because a monster was coming at her with its bloody mouth open, but it was cut in half before it could touch Sheila. She then pulls the axe out of her opponent with a roar that reaches the heavens. And there's no telling where the monster is taking us. It makes a creepy laugh. "Stay, don't move. We're almost there." And with that, it landed heavily on the ground with both of us in tow. When we were safely on the ground, we breathed a sigh of relief. A familiar and unfamiliar voice came immediately afterward. "Welcome to our family. Glad you got rid of those traitors. It must have been hard for you to bring me the baby. But you did it. There's nothing to worry about. From now on your family will protect you." Upon closer inspection, I realized that this man was the principal of the school, an animal. When I found that the other party's terrifying giant hand was reaching out, my whole body trembled with fear. But in the next second, my tiny hand has been grabbed by Ingshi. She also bit her lip and stammered to the principal, "Mr. Principal, were all those people who loved the village and left without saying goodbye expelled because they were bad? But all the monsters I've seen along the way are people who left the village." Even though Ingshi had an answer in mind, she still asked, "They're not, are they? You said everyone in the village was family. They're all valuable assets." But she's not done talking. "Xiaoming has come to us, looking at us as if we were ants," he said. "How dare you doubt the principal? Have you forgotten who worked so hard to raise you? I never taught you to do that either." Ingshi, who didn't see the situation, and yelled at him, "I haven't forgotten. But how did my family become monsters?" Before she could finish her sentence, Xiaoming kicked her in the stomach. I looked at this moment with a question mark on my face. Ingshi has fallen to the ground with a heavy blow. Can these two little girls escape next? Who's going to slap this man? How dare he bully two weak girls? He even kicked one of them in the stomach. The girl's mouth watered and tears flowed from her eyes as she was hit. She falls to the ground, shaking in pain and unable to move. At that moment, she felt that the principal in front of her was more terrifying than the devil. But he said that humans were protected by monsters, because they sacrificed their families. When you grow up, you'll understand everything I'm saying. Seeing the scene, I pointed at the principal enraged. My mother said that people who make others cry are bad people. So don't be so mean to her. If you keep being mean, I'm going to tell my parents. The man and the monster on the other side of the room were filled with questions when they heard this. The monster couldn't help himself, and even scoffed. I was furious at the jeers coming from all around me. But their verbal attacks were getting worse and worse. Some of them even said, "I'd marry your mother if she was beautiful." I clenched my fists in anger and took a deep breath. And then I screamed into the sky, "Mother, come and save me." Xiaoming was so angry that he wanted to beat me up. But the principal in front of him raised his hand and said, "Let her be. It's her last effort. Isn't she lovely and admirable? Seeking hope even in the most desperate situations." And then he smiled evilly and stretched out his horrible claws towards me. She was so cute, but I wanted to tear her to pieces. I lost my confidence instantly at this sight. A cold sweat broke out on my body and I shivered. Tears streamed from the corners of my eyes in fear. Then I clenched my fists again and shouted, "Mother!" At this point, the principal and Xiaoming felt a chill run down their backs. But before the principal could react, he was hit in the face by something. Upon closer inspection, discovered that what was flying towards him was the head of the monster Shaoling. Xiaoming immediately shoots in the direction of the attack. But in the next moment his eyes are filled with fear. For an axe has hacked the gun out of his hand. All of the monsters are also terrified by what they see. For it was the murderous zombie queen and the warrior woman Sheila who came. And both said in a furious voice, "What have you done with my daughter?" Turns out Zombie Queen had already dismembered Xiaoling before she got here. She's also killed all the monsters along the way. Only Diane, the female monster, was left sitting on the ground, shivering, muttering to herself, "How can I possibly defeat that monster? Father, there is nothing more I can do. Please forgive me. I was so happy to see my mother and Sheila come to rescue me." The monsters around us are talking about the yellow-eyed zombie queen, because the female monster their father was looking for was right in front of them. None of them knew how she came to be here. Had the brothers at the entrance been decimated by each other? How did the female warrior with the axe get here too? Seeing my loved ones, I hurriedly waved at the two and shouted, "Mother!" Zombie Queen was relieved to see her daughter safe and sound. She thought to herself, if she gets hurt a little, I'm not going to let Sheila and husband go. Sheila, who was gasping for air, wondered. Zombie Queen's appearance changed again in a short period of time. There are now 3 tentacles and something different growing out of them. When will she stop changing? She's a great threat to Zhu Fu. At this point, the principal is still holding his head in his hands in a pained manner. The monster next to him rushed to ask, "Mr. Headmaster, are you all right?" But he grinned, "Am I okay? Do you think I look okay the way I am?" And then he shouted in a rage, "Listen up, all of you. No matter what, we must capture that yellow-eyed guy alive. The rest of you join Instructor Xiuming in killing the woman with the axe." On the other hand, my arm was suddenly grabbed by Yingxi. She said to me, "You must be very scared. We should get out of here together. I know what I've done wrong to you, but this is our only chance. If your mom sacrifices herself, we can get out of here alive." Meanwhile, Sheila watched the enemy walking in front of her, breathing heavily, because Xiuming is walking towards her with a pistol in his hand and a couple of monsters. And Zombie Queen is facing tens of thousands of tough monsters. Seeing this, Yingxi had to ask me to run away. But when she saw the look on my face, she had a question mark on her face. Because at that moment, I smiled at her and said, "It's okay, my mothers, they're really strong." As expected, Zombie Queen didn't panic at all in the face of the monsters rushing towards her, simply waving the 3 tentacles on her back. The body of the monster rushing forward is pierced by countless spikes. The pain makes them cry their hearts out. There were those who were pierced through the aorta, and they didn't even dare to move. Zombie Queen quickly swings the spikes from her back. "Quickly kill the monsters in front of you." The principal was sweating in fear when he saw this scene. With a look of disbelief on his face, he can only stagger back a few steps. Yingxi suddenly hears bullets coming this way. It turns out that one of the monsters has turned its hands into 2 Gatlings. Suddenly a figure flew over Xiuming's head. One of the monsters saw this and quickly attacked the other. But he's surprised by what he sees, because what the tentacle pierced was just a piece of clothing, and the axe is already flying at its teammates. In the next second, the other team is at his feet. Before it can react, it is struck in the eye. Xiuming tries to fire, but the gun is knocked out of his hand before he can pull the trigger. It's Sheila who's been cleverly maneuvering her way out of trouble. "You've got nothing in your hand now, do you, asshole? Attack me if you can." Xiuming is in a cold sweat as he hears this. In the next moment, Sheila's uppercut hits him in the face. Zombie Queen has also slaughtered the herd of monsters. Seeing the danger eradicated, I quickly ran towards my mother. And then I gave her a long overdue hug. "I knew you'd come to my rescue in the worst of times, Mother. I haven't cried once when you weren't with me, and I haven't gone hungry." The mother cried tears of joy at this statement. It's clear that both sides are thinking of each other. Yingxi, on the other side of the room, was frozen in place when she saw how much the mother and daughter loved each other. She was horrified that not only was the zombie the girl's mother, it's that she remembers what her mother said to her in tears. But she herself cursed her loving mother to death. Thinking about this, she felt so guilty that in an instant tears flowed from her eyes like a flood. On the other side of the room, the principal looked at the scene in disbelief. He couldn't believe that all the other members of the family had died in a short period of time. Just when he thinks he's dreaming, Sheila comes up behind him. When he turns around, Sheila says to him, "It's over. There's no one to protect you now. You can't escape. You're having a terrible nightmare." A cold sweat is pouring down the forehead of the terrified principal. Then he looked up and roared above, "Mr. Founder, we're in trouble. Please wake up or we'll all be killed." The crowd on the sidelines immediately looked toward the principal upon hearing this. Just as Sheila swung his axe at him, an unfamiliar voice suddenly came out of his body. "Didn't I warn you not to wake me? I'm very tired." Just as Sheila is filled with doubt, he found a figure coming out of the principal's body. Seeing this, Sheila thought in a cold sweat. That stupid rat had been hiding that monster inside him all alone. He called the filthy thing Mr. Founder. With that in mind, Sheila swung his axe at the creature that emerged. But in the next moment she was dumbfounded by what she saw, because her own powerful attack was easily blocked by a single hand of the monster. Before Sheila can react, the creature is already attacking her. Luckily, she was able to dodge it perfectly. She then rushes to distance herself from the monster. At this point, a loud vomiting sound came from the principal. A spit-stained monster's leg is seen falling to the ground. Now I understand, yellow-eyed monsters and child in blue dress. They are definitely what my father was looking for. It's so good to see you guys. What a lucky day, those two prey are right in front of me. And then a one-eyed monster came into view. Seeing the savior coming, the principal smiled and said, Mr. Founder, I apologize for calling you out of the blue, as I just can't handle this situation on my own. The yellow-eyed monster and the axe woman are too powerful for me, so I humbly ask you to come out and help. But before the principal finished speaking, the other party actually attacked him. Only heard the monster say, how can you be so stupid? Immediately after that, one of the principal's ears was seen to be cut off. You fool, should have sought help before our family fell. The one-eyed monster's back sprouted a number of sharp spikes. Several people were surprised to see this, because the one-eyed monster's body is getting bigger and bigger. In a few moments, the spikes on his body have fully grown. Sheila reacts by grabbing Ingshi and running behind her, and then they falls to the ground. My mother, who is experienced in combat, also held me in her arms. In the next moment, we saw countless spikes coming out of the one-eyed monster's body. The power of the battle instantly shatters the light bulbs on the roof. The clever Sheila realizes at once, the other side is trying to block their view. And then all the lights dimmed in an instant. Only one, under the protection of Zombie Queen, is still lit. My mother, who was afraid that I would be hurt, immediately comforted me. Just when I answered her, it's too dark and I can't see anything. My mother suddenly felt a dangerous aura coming from her side. The spikes on her back then attacked her opponent. Unexpectedly, her powerful tentacles were caught by her opponent. Upon closer inspection, she realized that her opponent was Ingshi, who was shivering. The one who grabbed the spike was Sheila, who was protecting her. You want to kill her? Get your tentacles out of the way. Just as the mother asks who the girl is. In the next moment, she and Sheila feel danger approaching. And then they rush to take a position to protect Ingshi and me in the center. At this time, Zombie Queen secretly thought, what should I do? If I were alone, I could probably escape. But it's impossible to take my daughter safely, just when she didn't know what to do.